All right, gonna take a look at some DCU, some MCU, and a reboot or remake of an old horror classic. So right off the bat, of course, there was a lot of imagery from the Superman movie, so you get a better look at the suit and all that sort of thing. And here in this image I prepared, you have David Cornsweet in the Superman suit, which is a nod to the New 52 suit. And also, of course, the Kingdom Come emblem and the classic suit, because the New 52 suit did not have the red trunks, but he has it now. But a lot of elements are there, especially how the cape and the collar is almost there. It's not as the collar would probably be a lot higher up and covering more of his neck in the actual New 52 suit. But certainly the cape being attached to, I don't know, these lines and sections that go through the suit and around. It's very similar to that suit, and that's how like it's attached right there in some sort of bracket or whatever. This is about as far as I know, the main Clark Kent look, and they're calling this broccoli hair. But the idea is obvious: is to try to look as different as possible from his Superman persona, and to make this nerdy, awkward-looking Clark Kent. In some iterations in the comic book, he would kind of walk stooped over and stuff, so that he's not, standing tall with his chest out and all that type of stuff. And the elements to is it believable that you wouldn't recognize this as the same guy? Not really, but hey, you gotta go with it, And there were different iterations of it over the years. I always wondered if a solution to that a narrative would have been, how did he ever come up with the glasses in the first place? Was it just the idea for a disguise, or since his adopted parents, of course, they wear glasses, and say, oh, I'll look like them, or something of that nature. But I always thought, wouldn't it have been an interesting thing is that when he's a very young child, his vision powers come into form, and he's kind of not in control of them at first. So his X-ray vision, his heat vision, all that type of stuff, and ultimately he gets control of it, but he can never quite rein in a slight glow about his eyes, and so the glasses diffuse it. So then, but also that adds to almost a mask of, like, he would be looking like that, but like any Jimmy Olsen picture, you could not quite make out his face, and people would constantly say, it's like I can't look directly at him or something, and when I try to, it's odd, that kind of thing. But you want a handsome guy to play the role and all this sort of stuff, but at the same time, it could have gone to some degree as to why he wears those glasses and he looks like a normal dude. People don't put it together. But it's been so many decades. Oh, well, we're just going to go with that, So here's another shot of him walking around. There's a lot of complaints about the suit. Does look rather cheap, and that's true. And in comparison to the Henry Cavill suit, and granted, you can say, hey, in post it'll look better. And I imagine that's probably true. Especially when you consider the Sasha Calle costume that she wore as Supergirl in The Flash, and the behind the scenes, it didn't look that great. But in the movie, it looked fine, here you can see it wrinkles up a bit. It seems to be kind of, I don't know, like bulking there. I mean, the guy's in great shape, but it's kind of like this fold, and it's crumpling or something. But for actual shots, it just, make sure it doesn't look like that and that sort of thing. But the Henry Cavill suit, just every shot of him in it looked great. It looked fine. There was none of this in that suit, which I guess whatever the material was, or what, that was a more expensive suit to make. And this one, it's being called CW level, and I can't argue with it. It does look like a CW suit. However, at this point, the Tyler Hoechlin Superman suit looks to be a step above this one. and with the exception of, I guess, the shield, because the Superman shield on his chest, on the Tyler Hoechlin suit, it just looks screen printed on, whereas this one, has some, thickness to it and what have you. Um, as for Mr. Terrific, well, boy, it looks spot on, He looks like Mr. Terrific. And there was one from the Arrow show, but I never really watched Arrow. I was mostly just watching The Flash. And then, of course, the Lois and Superman show. But a similar thing, that's pretty much the look of Mr. Terrific. So, yeah, it looks like his outfit's better than Superman's. But there again, you can see this, wrinkling and stuff. It's just, yeah, it's too bad. But again, if it looks great in the movie, it really doesn't matter. It's interesting that the Cavill suit always looked good, and that's just the design of the suit, and so I guess had to go cheap, and I think that was the main, calling for this to abandon the DCEU and start over, because it's just not the money for that cast anymore and stuff like that. Plus, all the problems, and they make a clean sweep. Not really that clean when you consider Peacemaker and all that, but whatever. So here he is getting arrested. So this is interesting because once again, I forget her name, sorry, but she will be playing the engineer. And once again, she's in this black bodysuit you've seen her in before. And well, that's not what the engineer looks like. And then there's, I believe his name's Frank Grillo, playing Colonel Flagg Sr. They're supposed to be the father to the Flag we saw in Suicide Squad, and even though that's DCEU, it is now going to be a part of DCU with Peacemaker and stuff, so you just assume it's they look the same, but I guess they're going with the narrative that he is now dead as a result of the second Suicide Squad movie. And Frank Grillo will be playing the senior character in Creature Commandos, the cartoon, so he's the voice actor of that character. And in live action, he'll play him as well. And here he is apparently arresting Superman, similar to Man of Steel. But then, yeah, Engineer and this curious character. What's the U stand for? So there was a rumor about Ultraman appearing. And, of course, Ultraman is an evil version of Superman from an alternate universe. Instead of the Justice League, it was the Crime Syndicate of America. And quite a few stories and versions of that character over the years in comics. But the idea of him coming into this, would it be revealed that he is an alternate universe Superman for later stories? Or the rumor also indicated that no, he would be a clone of Superman used to, frame him for crimes and whatnot. But this getup, why would it be this? And it doesn't look anything like, because the Ultraman pretty much looked like Superman. It just had a U instead of an S on his chest. So what's the deal? Well, then perhaps he's not Ultraman. Of course, the clone story and all that, why not just go with Bizarro? I don't understand that. What I'm beginning to think here is, and I'm still not certain who he could be. I saw someone suggest this Ulysses character that was introduced not long ago, who's also a multiverse character. That it might be him, and that's why the U symbol would be there, and maybe so. But I don't know. I don't think there were any characters. I thought there was like an Ultimate guy or something, but back in the original 52 series, Lex Luthor had this Everyman project that he did, and I'm wondering if they're weaving that story here, and that Engineer fits into that as well. And maybe she's not fully the Engineer at this point, and by the end of the movie, she's got the nanobot technology and all that stuff going into the Authority film that they want to do. And this guy is a member of the Everyman Project as well. And actually this spawned a character called Everyman, who was a villain and all that. And maybe there's some elements of that weaved in this story that Gunn's doing. Um, but anyway, they think Superman's a criminal and he's being arrested. And it's probably not all, maybe this guy is in on it and that this is a plot from Luthor to frame Superman, and the rest of them, the soldiers and stuff, and Flag is unaware of this, and he just thinks, well, you're busted. And that sort of thing. And I guess maybe the same thing as Man of Steel. He's just going along with it. He's not going to beat them all up. He's just going to, put up with this for as long as necessary, and then leave. Or they zapped him with kryptonite or whatever, and his powers don't work. I don't know. But anyway, it's interesting. This is the mystery character, and what does that mean? Who is he with this big U on his chest? Who could he be? So speculation abounds. But we'll find out when the movie comes. Of course. Meanwhile, the other DCU news was it's official, the official green light for the Lantern series has been announced, and so they're underway. I believe it'll be 8 episodes for Max, and it will feature an older Hal Jordan, who's already an established legend within the Green Lantern Corps. And John Stewart will be a new recruit of the Lanterns. And they'll be investigating this strange, mysterious dark mystery on planet Earth, which, of course, I'm guessing that's again because it would be cheaper to do an Earth-based story, and I'm sure that's the case, with some spectacular moments here and there, and probably most notably at the final episode of this series. But it's supposed to set a later, bigger stage for the overall DCU story that Gunn has in mind. Some have suggested it might borrow from the center, from the New Frontier Justice League story that Darwin Cook did, and there was an animated version of that, so you can check that out. And maybe a lot of these elements will be picked here and picked there to form a greater story for these DC movies. So anyway, as soon as he announced it, I was excited for it. I've been excited about the idea of the premise of the buddy cop approach to Lanterns back when it was supposed to be a movie. And I imagine back in those days it was intended to be this sci-fi space spectacular. But, well, times are lean and mean now, so not going to get much of that. But a lot of it intrigued me, and because quite a bit of the announcements that Gunn did, I was not all that wowed by. But this one I was very interested in. But then the announcement came that Damon Lindelof and Tom King are involved. The Chris Mundy guy, hopefully he's more in charge than those two. But it's, oh boy, now I'm really worried about it. Hopefully it comes together, but, the track record's not good on those two. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's all you can do is hope about things like this. Meanwhile, over at the other U, the MCU, Kevin Feige made some remarks about the Fantastic Four. And, he's praising it and talking about how important they are and all this type of stuff. But the interesting thing was about the setting for it, and that it would be a period piece of sorts, and that it would not be in the Marvel universe of the MCU. I mean, it's an MCU movie, and so the rumors that they would be from an alternate timeline or universe or what have you appears to be quite the case. There's a lot of old-fashioned looks here, very 60s magazine art type things for these portraits of them. And then now here's this one of the Human Torch. But the interesting thing is the skyline of this. It looks like one of a retro futuristic city. But if this is supposed to be a New York skyline, because some of the buildings do look very much of New York, but they're the space age buildings and stuff. I don't know. And I don't even know if this is supposed to be the Inhumans moon based city or whatnot. But it doesn't look like he's on the moon. And besides, with his flame powers, I don't know if he wouldn't be able to do that in the atmosphere of the moon. But no, this looks like he's on Earth, but it's just an alternate view of the city. And so it's an interesting thing that this is their established Fantastic Four, and that they end up in the MCU perhaps after all the Secret Wars shenanigans and whatnot. Um, Maybe that's the case. And that's also the idea that, oh, there's going to be a female Silver Surfer. And one wondered, because there was rumors about a male Silver Surfer, that Norrin Radd was cast. And so if that's the case, maybe there's two different versions of them from two different universes. But since they've named she is Shala Bal, it sounds like, well, they'll both be silver people rather than the story of Silver Surfer being Norrin Radd, and that was it, you know. So anyway, it is interesting, but this seems to be more confirmation of that multiverse bent or approach, if you will. Earlier on, there were some suggestions that they would be from the distant past, and had been with Michael Douglas's Hank Pym character, had known him, and I guess, you know, Howard Stark and all that back in those days. And then they were deemed lost, perhaps trapped in the negative zone. And then for them, it's only been a couple of hours or whatever, or a day or something. And when they get back, it's, you know, 2020s, you know. And they're like, oh my God, you know, and then they emerge with their powers, you know, and that kind of thing. That could have worked too, but of course they wanted to do this whole multiverse saga thing, which has been completely derailed by the problems with Kang and Jonathan Majors scandal and all that. So, but still kind of locked into it, especially with the Fantastic Four. So it's interesting, but I'm very dubious that they can handle it, because they've been screwing up for quite a while now. So it's unfortunate, but anyway, yeah, it's interesting. But again, I have to wait and see how that turns out. So finally, a horror classic getting remade yet again. There's been other. This, of course, is Nosferatu, a remake of that classic silent movie, which, for all intents and purposes, was the most accurate depiction of the Dracula story. They just didn't have permission to do the Dracula story, so they called it Nosferatu. And then were promptly sued by the Bram Stoker estate. And by court order, we're supposed to destroy every copy of the Nosferatu film. As luck would have it, I don't know if it was just one or maybe there was a couple of copies, remained and were later found. And once Dracula is public domain, it really doesn't matter. And so, of course, the silent film is also public domain. And thank goodness, you know, because it's really creepy and quite the you know, just a more loyal take to the novel, and but it's just not called Dracula. It's the same story, but here they're gonna and there's been other remakes of it and stuff like that. And then there was one where they did it where it's, damn, what was the name of that movie? I never got a chance to see it. I'll have to look it up. Where they posited that the actor really was a vampire in the movie or something like that. But this is a modern retelling of it, and I think they're going, because I can't even remember, because it was a silent movie and I just watched it and didn't pay attention. It's been a while since I've seen it. I don't think they used the names of the characters because it wasn't supposed to be Dracula, but obviously it is. So I don't think Harker or any of that is in there, or Renfield, but obviously the same characters there, just different names. So of course this is evoking the imagery of the woman that was stalked by the vampire, and you saw his shadow come across her and all that. And so once again they're making use of it. It's very interesting looking. I only have a couple of scenes here, and I think this guy here is supposed, I don't think that's Nosferatu. I think that's his servant, not Renfield, eating animals. And yeah, and Nicholas Hoult is going to be Lex Luthor. He's like, screw this, I'm shaving my head and going to fight Superman. I don't want to deal with Nosferatu. So he's pretty grossed out here. But there he goes. And then here's an image. And I believe that's Willem Dafoe playing his character that I think is the Van Helsing character, only he won't be called Van Helsing and that sort of thing. But anyway, there he is, probably disposing of one of the vampires that Nosferatu created. And he seems pretty happy about his work, setting it all on fire and everything. But anyway, very stylistic of the era and whatnot, and looks cool, and hopefully it is. So really getting deep into horror movies these days because everything else is crap. And some little nuggets here, and some not so great, and some that are okay, and some that are pretty good, and certainly quite a few that are quite interesting. So looking forward to checking this one out. So there you go. Superman, Green Lanterns, Fantastic Four, and Nosferatu. Yeah, that's some of the little coming attractions that I glanced upon this week for the Nailsin ratings.